Where hunger meets memory and every dish is a wish, I stir grief into comfort and pain into flavor. This is not a place of miracles, but of quiet reckonings. She was the flame, I am the ash, and still, we feed the broken. In her absence, I became the witch. They always talk about hunger like it's a physical thing, an ache in the belly, a growl in the gut. But there's another kind of hunger, one far more dangerous. The kind that starts in the soul and spreads until it devours every part of you. That's the hunger I carried when I found the witch's diner. It wasn't a place I was supposed to find. It existed in the in-between, a sliver of space where time slowed and reality softened. I never noticed the alley before that night, even though I'd walked that street 100 times. But then again, I'd never been quite so broken. It began like any other ordinary collapse. I lost my job, a restructuring they called it, the kind where ambition isn't enough and your loyalty becomes disposable. A few days later, the man I loved, the one I thought would be the rest of my life, decided otherwise. And as if fate wanted to make a point, my mother, my last thread of safety, fell sick. Fast, irreversible, cruel. I stood on the sidewalk with a plastic bag of convenience store food, the rain soaking through my coat, watching the world move as if it owed me nothing. I didn't cry. I was past crying. What I felt was something worse, a hollowing, like my insides had been scooped out and replaced with silence. Then I saw it, a narrow alley carved between two concrete buildings. At the end of it, a faint glow, warm and golden. Something tugged at me. I walked. The sign was old wood, etched with characters that shimmered in the dark. The Witch's Diner. It sounded absurd. But my feet moved forward, the door opened without a sound. And inside, everything changed. The air smelled like herbs and something ancient. The warmth wasn't just from the fire. It was something deeper, older, like the walls themselves remembered every story told inside. Shelves lined with spices I couldn't name, bottles glowing faintly, and paintings that moved subtly when you weren't watching. The tables were worn, the chairs mismatched, and yet it felt like the safest place in the world. She stood behind the counter like she'd always been there. The witch. There was no point pretending she was anything else. Her eyes gave her away, violet, endless, weary. Her presence filled the room, not like thunder, but like dusk, quiet, inevitable. She wore black, of course, but not the theatrical kind. It suited her, as though the night itself had decided to take human form. She didn't ask me what I wanted. She looked at me and saw everything, every crack, every loss, every unspoken scream, and then she moved to the kitchen. I don't remember the meal she served. I only remember the way it tasted, like grief boiled down to sweetness, like rage softened with warmth. It filled me not with joy, but with something better, the will to go on. When I left, I wasn't fixed, but I wasn't empty anymore. I returned again and again. At first, I convinced myself it was a coincidence. I told myself the place wasn't magical, just odd, comforting, and strange. But the others who came there, they confirmed it. One by one, people arrived with desperation etched into their bones. A teenager with self-hate so sharp it bled from her smile. An old man with a photograph of his lost son, clutched like a talisman. A young woman who wanted revenge so badly it haunted her every step. They sat, they spoke, the witch listened, then she cooked. Always a dish, always perfect, and always there was a price. Some gave trinkets, others memories. Some walked away with a limp or voice or heartbeat forever changed. But no one was left untouched. Wishes, she taught us, are never free, and some are far too expensive to afford. I became part of the place, not because she asked, because I needed to stay. I cleaned, served, and stirred sauces I couldn't name. I watched her work, not just with food, but with people. She didn't heal them. She fed the hunger beneath the hunger, the thing they couldn't name even to themselves. She gave them a chance to understand it, to embrace it, to lose to it, whatever they chose. She was not cruel, but she was not kind. She was exact. One night a man came in with eyes full of fury. He didn't sit, he stalked. Demanded to know what she put in her food. He demanded to know why his wife had changed and why his daughter wept in her sleep. She looked at him once and turned away. He stormed out. The door slammed. The window cracked. The lights flickered. But she said nothing. Only returned to her broth, as if that, too, required silence to simmer properly. There were rules unspoken but rigid. She never cooked twice for the same dish, never promised results, never interfered once the food was eaten, and most of all, she never made a dish for herself. I asked her once, in a moment of foolish bravery, why she didn't eat her own creations. She looked at me for a long time, then turned away. I understood. Whatever her wish had been, it was still cooking. There was a loneliness in her that even the fire couldn't warm. I saw it in the way she touched the spices, in the way she stared at the empty chair in the corner, in the way her shoulders curled inward when she thought no one was watching. She had been powerful too long. She had seen too much, and she had forgotten how to want anything for herself. Sometimes late at night I would wake and find her still in the kitchen. Not cooking, just breathing. As if the walls needed her heartbeat to stay upright. I never interrupted. I only watched. The other staff came and went. Some couldn't handle the weight of the place. Others didn't understand what it meant to serve people on the edge of collapse. But I stayed, because I began to believe in what we did. Not as miracles, not as magic, but as mercy. I watched people change. I watched them break. I watched them walk away lighter, or more burdened. I never knew which would happen. That was the mystery of desire. Some people were healed by the truth, others destroyed. And eventually I began to change too. Not with spells, not with rituals, but slowly like winter giving way to spring. I found strength I didn't know I had. I stopped waiting for the world to rescue me. I began to understand that hunger isn't something to be ashamed of. It's something to understand, to respect, to feed, wisely. Still, I resisted the urge to make my own wish. I had watched too many lives tilt under the weight of theirs. I told myself I didn't need it. I told myself I was stronger than the ache that curled in my ribs late at night, whispering of things I didn't dare hope for. But hunger finds you eventually. It was an ordinary night when it happened. We had just closed. The last guest, a woman who had come seeking forgiveness for something she never confessed aloud, had left weeping softly. I cleaned the last table. The witch stood at the stove, stirring something slow and golden. She didn't look at me. She didn't speak. But I felt it, the weight of her magic bending toward me, as if the diner itself had turned its head and decided to listen. And I broke. The wish tumbled from me like breath I had held too long. I didn't even know I was speaking it. It wasn't for love, or success, or revenge. It was for strength. Not the kind that lifts cars or breaks locks. The kind that lets you keep going when the days bleed gray. The kind that steadies your hand when you're shaking. The kind that forgives yourself for wanting anything at all. Just once. The dish was warm, simple. Rice, broth, herbs, and something that shimmered when the light caught it. It tasted like everything I'd lost, and everything I still carried. It hurt to eat. It healed to swallow. Afterward, I slept for a day and a half. And when I woke, the world was not new. But I was. The first morning after my wish, everything looked the same. But I was different. I moved slower, more aware. I breathed as if I had forgotten how and only just remembered. I didn't smile more, or speak louder, or change my clothes. The strength I wished for wasn't loud. It was quiet, rooted, and permanent, like a tree that doesn't flinch in the storm. The witch said nothing. But she watched me more after that. There was a softness in her gaze now, like something she had locked away was starting to creak open. The kind of look you give someone who reminds you of a younger version of yourself, full of fear, full of fire. I thought my journey in the diner had found its center. But the center was still ahead. Because the closer I moved toward understanding myself, the closer I drifted to her. And eventually, the diner began to show me pieces of her I was never meant to see. It began with a smell, rosemary and burnt orange peel, rising through the floorboards like memory. Then came the visions, glimpses of another time flickering in the corner of my eyes. The paintings on the walls shifted subtly. Once familiar landscapes now became ruins, a young woman standing alone beneath a blood-red moon. She was not always a witch. I saw it in flashes. Her sitting at a table not unlike our own, clutching the hands of someone who looked like sunlight, her tears falling into a pot of stew, the echo of laughter that never came again. She had been in love once, that much became clear. And someone had taken that love from her. The magic, I realized, was born not from power, but from pain. This diner, this sanctuary for the broken, was built from grief so profound it spilled into the world and reshaped it. Every wish she granted, every dish she stirred, was a ritual of mourning. She wasn't feeding hunger, she was feeding loss. As I came to understand her past, I began to see the price she had paid. Not in coins or years, but in identity. She no longer used a real name. She no longer walked outside the boundaries of the diner. Her life was this place. Her soul was bound to the magic that sustained it. And something was changing. The signs were subtle, but I knew the scent of endings. The fire took longer to start. The broth didn't boil as easily. She moved slower. Her hands, once steady as knives, began to tremble. She was unraveling. Magic, like memory, had limits. Then came the night of the storm. The wind howled like it knew our secrets. The candles flickered violently even before the windows cracked open. A man entered, a young one, dressed like charm and hiding something rotten. His wish was dark, desperate, the kind that left claw marks. The witch cooked for him. She never refused a wish, but something in her fractured that night. I saw it in her eyes as she served the meal. She had crossed a threshold. She knew it. And when he left, carrying a future that would turn to ash in his hands, she sat down for the first time in front of the fire and closed her eyes. She did not rise again for hours. I lit the candles. I cleaned the bowls. I wrapped her in the old shawl she never used. She didn't speak, but I understood she was nearing the end. The diner wasn't just hers, it was her body, her memory, her final spell, and she couldn't sustain it forever. One night I walked into the kitchen and found a book on the table, bound in deep blue, stitched with silver thread. It pulsed with warmth. Her handwriting filled its pages. Recipes, yes, but also thoughts, warnings, and reflections. There were pages marked with dates I didn't recognize. Pages about me. She had been preparing to leave. Not in a hurry. Not in fear. But like someone who knows winter is coming and begins to fold her scarves. I cried when I read it. Not because I didn't know, but because I didn't want to let her go. Still, I understood what she needed. The night she left, there was no goodbye. No final spell. Just a quiet closing of a door I didn't see her walk through. She simply wasn't there anymore. But her presence lingered in the walls, in the dishes she had taught me, and in the fire that never truly died. I lit every candle that night, opened every window, let the wind come through. The diner shifted, not dramatically, just enough. And then it was mine. Not in name, not in power, but on purpose. I took up the apron, I unlocked the door, I waited. And they came. The hungry. The broken. The ones who had nowhere else to go. I listened, I stirred, I cooked. My magic was not as powerful as hers. My eyes did not hold centuries. But I had known hunger. I had learned grief. I had tasted strength, not from a wish, but from becoming someone who dared to keep living. The dishes I made were simpler, but they carried weight. A woman asked for closure. I gave her a meal that tasted like autumn and endings. A boy asked to forget his guilt. I made him a dessert that tasted like lullabies and absence. A mother begged for one more moment with her daughter. I gave her soup that smelled like lullabies and carried the warmth of memories. Sometimes I fail. Not every hunger can be fed. Some wishes were never meant to be answered, but I keep the fire going. I keep the books updated. I stir slowly. I listen deeply. And every now and then, when the moon hangs low and the night grows still, I feel her again. Not in the kitchen, but in me. A presence, a warmth, a knowing. The witch's diner still stands, tucked away where the lost might find it. The tables still creak, the lights still flicker, and the air still smells of rosemary and longing. I am not her, but I carry her story. I serve the ones she once fed. I have made peace with the hunger. And I cook.